My dear ones, let me paint you a picture straight from real life as your investor big sister by taking you into two apartments in the same city, the same neighborhood with similar rents. In the first apartment lives someone earning $95,000 a year. You walk in and see a massive 75-inch television on the wall, a $4,000 leather sofa set. The kitchen is filled with appliances still in their boxes, the wardrobes are overflowing with clothes that still have their tags on, and the spare room has become a storage unit for things that haven't been touched in years. Yet this person gets stomach cramps when checking their bank account and would be in crisis if they missed just 2 paychecks. Now let's look at the second apartment where someone earning $52,000 a year lives. Inside, simplicity and spaciousness catch the eye. A modest couch, a reasonably sized television, only the regularly used appliances in the kitchen, only the clothes actually worn in the closet, and the spare room is genuinely a bedroom. This person checks their bank account with complete peace and confidence. They have savings on the side to cover 18 full months of expenses, and they direct 20% of every paycheck into investments. Think about it. In the same neighborhood, the person earning nearly half as much has 10 times more financial security than the other. This is actually not a story about income. It is the story of that hidden difference between stuff and money that most people never understand. The first person is not a bad person or a gambler. They are simply someone who has made a habit of spending every dollar they earn. The second person has discovered that secret that changes everything. Owning fewer things does not mean living less of a life, and this awareness creates the kind of financial flexibility that most high earners never get to taste. Today, I am going to tell you, as advice from a big sister, the money rules that separate someone who always has growing wealth and investments from someone who never has any money left over. These rules are not about depriving yourself. They are about understanding that every object you own has ongoing costs you have never calculated. Let me start with a concept that will reshape every purchase you make for the rest of your life. Everything you own costs twice as much as you think. The first cost is obvious. It is the price on the tag. But the bigger cost is the storage and maintenance cost. That treadmill you bought takes up space in your home, doesn't it? In major cities, the per square meter cost of that space is roughly $30 to $50 per year. If the treadmill, with the space around it, takes up 2 square meters, that means you are paying a hidden rent of somewhere between $600 and $1,000 a year just to keep that machine you are using as a clothes rack. The second cost also includes maintenance. That boat sitting in your driveway has winterizing, cleaning, registration, insurance, and repair costs. The general rule in the industry is that annual maintenance costs equal about 10% of the boat's value. So a $30,000 boat costs you $3,000 a year even if you never put it in the water. And it doesn't stop there, my dear ones. The second cost also drains mental energy. Every single item you own takes a small portion of your attention. It needs to be cleaned, organized, protected, insured, worried about, and eventually gotten rid of. Research shows that visual clutter raises cortisol levels and reduces the brain's ability to focus. Your belongings are stressing you out in ways you don't even notice, and of course, there is the opportunity cost. Every dollar locked up in stuff is a dollar that should have become an investment but didn't. Instead of that $15,000 home gym, if you had put that money into index funds, you could have reached $50,000 or more in 15 years. You didn't just buy a gym, you gave away your future financial freedom in exchange for that gym. When you add up these hidden costs, many possessions end up costing more to own than they cost to buy. The purchase price is only the entry fee. The real costs continue for as long as you own the thing. Minimalists understand this intuitively. They avoid things not because they hate beautiful objects, but because they've done the math and decided most things aren't worth it. And that leads us to the first rule that minimalists follow religiously. Rule 1. Calculate the cost per use before any purchase. Before you buy something, estimate how many times you will realistically use it and divide the total cost by that number. This gives you the cost per use, the only honest measure of value. A $200 jacket worn only twice costs $100 per wearing. A $400 jacket worn 200 times costs $2 per wearing. The objectively expensive jacket is actually far cheaper in any meaningful sense. This calculation instantly kills most impulse purchases. That $300 kitchen gadget you will use twice a year costs $150 per use in its first year alone. That is a ridiculously expensive way to accomplish that task. On the other hand, a $30 tool you use every week costs less than 60 cents per use in the first year. Cost per use also reveals which purchases are genuinely worth it. A $2,000 mattress used every night for 10 years costs roughly 55 cents per use. That is extraordinary value for something that affects your health and energy every single day. A $1,500 espresso machine used daily for 5 years costs less than $1 per use and actually saves money compared to buying a coffee out every day. The math cuts through marketing, emotion, and social pressure. It shows what is financially sensible versus what merely feels attractive in the moment. Rule 2. Apply the replacement test to everything you already own. Walk through your home and look at every item and ask yourself this simple question. If this item disappeared today, would I spend money to replace it? Be honest, my dear ones. Would you actually go out and buy another fondue set? Would you replace that bread maker gathering dust in the cupboard? Would you repurchase those clothes you haven't worn in 18 months? For most items, the honest answer is no. They are impulse purchases, gifts you felt obligated to keep, or remnants of past hobbies and phases. These items have negative value. They take up space, mental energy, and maintenance without delivering any corresponding benefit. They steal time you could be spending on what actually matters in your life. Minimalists ruthlessly eliminate items that fail the replacement test. They sell what has value, donate what someone else could use, and discard what serves no one. The process feels uncomfortable at first, but once complete, it is liberating. The psychological burden of owning things you don't want or need is enormous. Removing that burden creates a mental space that is hard to describe, but instantly noticeable. Rooms feel larger, decisions feel simpler, cleaning takes half the time. You know where everything is because everything that remains has a purpose. Rule 3, never upgrade out of boredom or to show off. There is a pattern I constantly see among people who earn good money, but have nothing to show for it. They upgrade perfectly functioning things simply because they are bored with them, or because a new version came out. Their television works flawlessly, but the new model has slightly better contrast. Their phone works perfectly, but the new one has a marginally improved camera. Their car runs reliably, but this year's model has an updated style. Their furniture serves its purpose, but they are tired of looking at it. These kinds of changes can feel good in the moment, but they slowly erode the wealth you could be building. Minimalists follow a strict policy. Never replace something that works properly. A phone that makes calls, sends messages, and runs apps does not need to be replaced just because a new one came out. A car that gets you from place to place reliably does not need to be replaced just because a neighbor got something shinier. This policy saves enormous amounts of money over a lifetime. The average American replaces their phone every 2 to 3 years, usually while the previous phone still works perfectly. Over 30 years, this pattern costs $30,000 to $50,000 in unnecessary purchases. Applied across all the categories where upgrade culture operates, lifetime waste easily exceeds $200,000. Minimalists escape this trap by defining functional clearly. An item remains functional until it genuinely stops serving its purpose. Boredom is not failure. Wanting something newer is not failure. The existence of better alternatives is not failure. Actual mechanical breakdown, or the inability to perform required tasks, is failure. Everything else is marketing designed to convince you that you have problems you don't actually have. Rule 4. Create friction for spending and ease for saving. Human behavior follows the path of least resistance, my beautiful ones. If spending is easy and saving is hard, you spend. If saving is easy and spending is hard, you save. Minimalists design their environment to make the right choice the easy choice. Spending friction looks like deleting saved credit card numbers from online retailers, creating a mandatory 24-hour waiting period before any non-essential purchase, removing shopping apps from your phone, unsubscribing from promotional emails, and avoiding stores unless you have a specific purpose. Saving ease looks like automatic transfers to investment accounts on payday, keeping only small amounts in easily accessible checking accounts, making investment contributions before the money ever reaches your hands, and treating saving as a fixed expense rather than an afterthought. These structural changes matter more than willpower. Willpower depletes throughout the day. Your environment is constant. Someone relying on willpower to avoid impulse purchases will eventually fail when tired, stressed, or emotional. Someone who has deleted shopping apps and removed credit cards simply cannot impulse shop in that moment. Minimalists don't trust themselves to always make good decisions. They design systems that make good decisions automatic. The 24-hour waiting rule alone eliminates roughly 70% of impulse purchases. Most desires for things fade within a day, if not acted on immediately. Rule 5. Regularly count your possessions. This sounds obsessive until you actually do it, my dear ones. Counting forces awareness, and awareness prevents accumulation. Pick a category, count how many items you own in that category, and write it down. The numbers typically shock people who have never objectively examined their consumption patterns. How many shirts do you own? Most people underestimate and discover they have 3 or 4 times what they guessed. How many kitchen gadgets? How many pairs of shoes? How many items in your junk drawer? How many books you will never read again? The act of counting itself changes behavior. When you know you have 47 shirts, adding one more feels different. You are not adding a shirt, you are expanding your collection to 48, and the absurdity becomes visible. Minimalists track key categories over time. They set maximum thresholds, maybe 30 total clothing items, maybe 15 books at any given time, or perhaps a one-in, one-out policy where every new purchase requires removing something existing. These constraints prevent lifestyle creep. Without deliberate limits, possessions expand to fill whatever space is available. With limits, every addition requires a conscious decision about what it replaces. That friction alone significantly reduces acquisition. Rule 6. Rent or borrow before buying. Most things people purchase get used intensely for a short period and then rarely touched again. My lambs, the excitement of novelty fades, initial enthusiasm wanes, and the item joins the collection of owned but rarely touched things. Minimalists test this pattern by renting or borrowing before committing to ownership. Thinking about getting into camping? Rent equipment for the first few trips. Want to try woodworking? Borrow tools from a friend or use a workshop. Want a kayak? Rent one a few times before buying. This approach accomplishes 2 things. First, it reveals whether enthusiasm is genuine or temporary. Many interests fade after initial exploration. Better to discover that while renting than after buying equipment that collects dust indefinitely. Second, it clarifies exactly what you need. First-time campers often overbuy or buy the wrong things. Renting lets you learn before you commit. When you eventually do buy, you get exactly what's needed based on experience rather than guesswork. The buy-first mindset imposes enormous costs on people over their lifetimes. Wardrobes and garages are filled with the dusty remnants of abandoned enthusiasms. Ski equipment from the period they thought they would ski regularly. Photography gear from when they imagined becoming a serious photographer. Music equipment from bands that played 2 gigs. Minimalists avoid becoming museums of past enthusiasms. They test interests before investing in them and maintain the flexibility to explore without the burden of ownership. Rule 7. Understand the lifestyle multiplier effect. Every item you own connects to other items, my dear ones. A boat requires a trailer, a vehicle with a hitch, storage fees, maintenance supplies, safety equipment, and appropriate clothing. What looks like a single purchase actually triggers a cascade of related purchases. This is the lifestyle multiplier. Major purchases compound into ecosystems of related expenses. The real cost is never just the item itself. Watch how this plays out with common purchases. A home gym requires flooring, mirrors, storage solutions, ventilation considerations, and often renovation to make the space appropriate. A pool requires chemicals, cleaning equipment, covers, furniture, maintenance tools, and often landscaping to complete the installation. A motorcycle requires gear, storage, maintenance equipment, and often a truck or trailer to transport it to riding locations. Minimalists calculate the full ecosystem cost before any major purchase. They know that a $5,000 purchase may actually represent $8,000 or $12,000 when all the multiplier expenses are included. This complete accounting often transforms what seems like a reasonable purchase into something clearly excessive. The multiplier works in reverse too, my lambs. Eliminating a major possession often eliminates an entire category of related expenses. Selling the boat means no more storage fees, insurance, registration, maintenance, or towing costs. The savings extend far beyond the value of the item itself. Rule 8. Define enough before you start earning more. Here is something that constantly traps high earners, my dear ones. They never define what enough looks like, so they keep purchasing without ever reaching satisfaction. Their income rises, so they upgrade their lifestyle. The new lifestyle normalizes, so they need another income increase to feel progress. This cycle continues indefinitely. People earning $300,000 feel as much financial stress as people earning $80,000 because their expectations and spending have expanded along with their income. Minimalists break this cycle by defining enough before they start earning more. They decide in advance what kind of home is sufficient, what kind of car meets their needs, what level of material comfort creates genuine satisfaction. Then they earn toward that target instead of constantly moving the goalposts. This might mean deciding that a $350,000 home is enough even if you can eventually afford $600,000. It might mean deciding a $30,000 car is sufficient while colleagues drive $70,000 vehicles. It might mean deciding your current wardrobe is adequate even when your income could support constant upgrading. Defining enough creates a finish line, my lambs. Without one, you are running an endless race, where lifestyle expansion always outpaces income growth. With one, you reach a point where additional income flows entirely into savings and investment rather than consumption. Someone who defines enough at $60,000 in annual spending and then starts earning $150,000 builds wealth at an extraordinary pace. The $90,000 gap between income and enough goes directly toward financial freedom. Meanwhile, someone earning that same $150,000 but constantly redefining enough upward may save almost nothing. Rule 9. Measure wealth by optionality, not accumulation. Conventional wisdom measures wealth by what you own, my dear ones. Houses, cars, status symbols. Minimalists measure wealth differently. They measure it by what they can choose. Can you quit a job that is destroying your mental health? Can you take 6 months off to deal with a family emergency? Can you move to a new city for a relationship? Can you start a business without guaranteed income? Can you retire before 65? Can you say no to opportunities that pay well, but compromise your values? These options represent real wealth, and they are only available to people who have created a significant margin between their income and their expenses. Someone earning $200,000 but spending $195,000 has almost no optionality. They are chained to their income requirement. Someone earning $80,000 but spending $45,000 has extraordinary optionality. They can absorb setbacks, take risks, and make decisions based on preference rather than financial necessity. Minimalists understand that optionality requires liquid resources rather than physical assets, my dear ones. Money locked up in a car you don't need cannot buy your freedom when you need it. Home equity trapped in an oversized house cannot finance a career transition or an extended sabbatical. This perspective transforms spending decisions. Every purchase is not just a trade of money for an object. It is a trade of optionality for ownership. Is this item worth reducing your ability to make free choices about your life? Sometimes yes, but usually no. Rule 10. Practice cyclical simplification rather than annual purging. Most people who try minimalism do a big purge, feel great for a few weeks, and then gradually drift back to where they started, my lambs. The purge feels productive, but gradual reaccumulation goes unnoticed. Within 2 years, they are right back where they began. Minimalists escape this pattern through cyclical simplification. Rather than massive annual purges, they conduct small, regular reviews, weekly glances at incoming items, monthly evaluations of a single category, quarterly assessments of overall accumulation trends. His cyclical approach catches accumulation before it reaches overwhelming levels. Removing 3 items per week is manageable and sustainable. Removing 300 items once a year feels overwhelming and often gets postponed indefinitely. The cyclical approach also maintains awareness, my lambs. When you regularly review your possessions, you notice patterns. You see which categories tend to grow. You identify which emotional states trigger acquisition. You understand which marketing tactics work particularly well on you. This awareness enables prevention rather than just treatment. Now let me give you a practical application of these rules. You can start today, my dear ones. This week, walk through your home with the replacement test in mind. Identify 10 items you would not replace if they disappeared, sell, donate, or discard those items, and notice how it feels to remove things you do not actually want. This month, apply the 24-hour rule to all non-essential purchases. Track how many purchase impulses survive the waiting period and how many evaporate. The data will reveal how much of your spending is impulsive rather than intentional. This quarter, count your possessions in 3 categories that tend to accumulate for most people. Clothing, kitchen items, and media or entertainment are good starting points. Set a maximum threshold for each category based on what you actually use this year. This year, define what enough looks like in your major spending categories. What home is sufficient? What transportation meets your needs? What wardrobe serves your actual requirements? Write these definitions down and refer back to them when the temptation arises to exceed your own standards. The financial transformation from applying these rules compounds over time, my beautiful ones. Someone who consistently applies these rules for 5 years saves significantly more while accumulating significantly less. The gap between their lifestyle and their income creates wealth that cannot be built any other way. Here is what nobody tells you about minimalism and money, my dear ones. The relationship runs in both directions. Owning less creates more money, but having more money also makes owning less feel natural. When your savings account is solid and your investments are growing, the urge to accumulate diminishes. The psychological need driving most consumption, the need for security and status, gets satisfied through financial strength rather than physical possessions. You do not need things to feel successful because your bank account already tells you the story you want to hear. People who consume constantly cannot explain why they own so much. The truth is usually that spending temporarily fills an emotional void created by financial insecurity. Address the insecurity through real financial strength, and the spending impulse often resolves itself. This creates a virtuous cycle, my dear ones. Spending less leads to more savings. More savings creates security. Security reduces the emotional drive to spend. Reduced spending accelerates savings further. Each turn of the cycle strengthens the next. The opposite cycle is equally powerful but destructive. Spending everything creates insecurity. Insecurity triggers more spending as temporary emotional relief. More spending deepens the insecurity. The cycle continues until an external shock forces a breaking point. The choice between these cycles determines financial trajectory more than income does. High earners caught in the destructive cycle destroy their financial wealth. The minimalist rules I have described are not about suffering or deprivation, my dear ones. They are about recognizing that most consumption does not actually increase life satisfaction. Research consistently shows that beyond a basic level of security and comfort, additional purchases contribute minimally to well-being. Yet most people spend as if happiness scales linearly with expenditure. Minimalists align their behavior with this research. They spend enough to be comfortable and then direct the surplus toward freedom rather than accumulation. They end up with fewer things and more life. That apartment I described at the start, the one where someone earning $52,000 has 18 months of savings, belongs to someone who has consistently applied these rules, my lamb. They arrive there not with exceptional income, but with exceptional clarity about what actually matters. That other apartment where the person earning $95,000 would be in crisis after missing 2 paychecks belongs to someone who never questioned the assumption that more stuff equals a better life. Whatever you are earning right now, both lifestyles are available to you, my dear ones. The choice is simply this: do you want to own your things, or are you comfortable letting your things own you? The math strongly supports the first option, and so does peace of mind.